I'm Gary Lyon and welcome to Access All Areas. Premiers last year outside of the top 8 at round 13. Matthew Lloyd, Damien Barrett. What has gone wrong at the Bulldogs?
Yeah, and they're in the midst of a really bad form slump, guys. 4 of 5 losses of their past 5 games, and the coach is saying it's not attitudinal. I beg to differ. We'll get to that in a minute. But, Lord, the other clubs seem to have worked them out.
They're being hunted now. They were the hunters through September, Gary. I thought they were the 7th ranked side going into the finals, but for 4 weeks they just hunted the opposition. They were manic, they were desperate. I always was worried about their forward line, but they just made it work because the repeat inside 50s due to that pressure. But the last 2 weeks, Gary, they kicked 6 goals against Sydney last week, 8 goals yesterday. Yeah. They're being outworked, and that handball game, which they worked so well for them last year, is just being sweated upon. Yeah,
it was a very poor response on the back of such a disappointing game previously against the Sydney Swans. We thought there was going to be a response. It wasn't there. I just wonder whether, this time last year we wouldn't have had them in the frame as a potential premier, so we wouldn't have been assessing them as a potential premier, and they may not have been that far off the pace. I think that's been generous, but that's what their response could be.
Well, they weren't losing games last year like they've lost the past 2. No. They're getting blown away. The games are well and truly decided before the last quarter. That wasn't happening at all last year. It didn't happen in Luke Beveridge's first year. So, Gary, just to delve deeper into what Lordo said about being the hunted, who's improved on 2017 over 2016?
Well, I think that's the most pressing question. I can't think of one. Maybe Bailey Dale, who's now getting a game and wasn't. But apart from that, it's hard to put numbers down or names down. So the ones who have been most disappointing, Lord, I think Tom Boyd is going to be a real issue going forward. Cordy, he's a premiership player. That's a strong reputation in and of itself, but he's not playing like that now. Stringer, Dixon, Johannisen, Picken, they're senior list players I've got there that just aren't anywhere near it.
Yeah, and obviously Liberatore just gets back in the side. Matthew Boyd couldn't get a game. Clay Smith was a man of the final series. He was in the VFL on the weekend, so...
You haven't mentioned Bontempelli either of you. I know he's going okay, but he's not going at 2016 standards. I know he had an interrupted pre-season, but he too?
No, I agree. That's what I say. He hasn't improved in terms of what he put out last year, but his performance is still enough to suggest that he's contributing. But those blokes... Yeah, they've got big issues, big issues.
Look, the coach, Luke Beveridge, trying to play it down. Just want to take you through a snapshot, Lordo, of what he said post-match yesterday and then compare it with what he had said last year.
It's definitely not an attitudinal issue or an application issue. A belief in yourself as an individual and as a team can be fleeting. We've kept it going for a while. At the moment, we're challenged in that regard. So, we're just trying to troubleshoot and problem solve and get ourselves in a mindset where, we think we can really win again. And
even those words, troubleshoot and problem solve, but they weren't words or phrases that Luke Beveridge was using last year. Remember the phrase that he used almost from round 2 or 3? One soldier goes down, another one comes in, we replace it. There's a different narrative coming out of that club, and maybe the coach's messaging is part of what's going on.
It was a Hawthorn mantra, wasn't it? Whether he took that from Hawthorn or not, but that was Clarko's attitude as well, is he just replaced one with another, and who knows, pressure comes on the players, and they don't seem to be handling it. Maybe the coach now is feeling a bit of pressure too.
It's a reason not many teams go back-to-back, don't they? One, the toll it takes on winning a premiership, playing right through September. Obviously, some guys get comfortable and then you're hunted. We'd like they're being at the moment.
We live in a world of social media, boys, that I'm not that familiar with. I know you are, Lordo, and Damo, you have to be. But this went around at about, an hour before the game yesterday. You ready? At Jason Johannisen. That's a picture of Tommy Bugg and Jack Watts. That caused all sorts of consternation. Now, it depends what age you are, I suppose, and what area you grew up in.
You don't like it, though, do you? I can tell.
No, I was very, very nervous.
But what's the big deal?
Well, I guess from my own point of view, you look at it as a Melbourne supporter and you go, Johannison's going to have 35 and Tom Bugg's...
And if he did, would it be because of that Instagram post? No, it wouldn't. So let's all grow up.
But that'd be the narrative. That'd be the narrative. You put pressure on yourself and you didn't back it up. Tommy Bugg gambled and walked away a winner.
That's what Tommy Bugg does. And it doesn't reflect the club.
I bet you he doesn't gamble again.
I bet you he doesn't either, because of what's been said in the post-game.
But I'll put back at you, why do you do it?
Why don't you do it? Why don't we do it more and see what happens? He set the tone for what happened yesterday.
Why don't you just hunt him without putting an Instagram post
Well, he can do that as well, can't he? But if Tommy Bugg didn't get a kick and the Bulldog and Melbourne lost, that's not reflective of the club by what he did on the Instagram.
They'll say you're disrespectful.
I would say that. Be big enough to say
you picked a fight, you didn't win. No, but Damo, you opened the door to that criticism.
Yeah.
And then
Tommy Bug's a big boy,
well,
and he responded, Gaz.
He won.
You know what? It's a bit of Hayden Ballantyne about him, and he's getting up supporters' noses, opposition supporters' noses, opposition players' noses, clearly your nose. And this is the captain, the calm, measured, reassured captain of the Western Bulldogs before the game starts, has got himself into a skirmish.
No, it's good. He's a pest, and he's actually influenced games. He played really well, and this is the most important thing. A whole generation of football supporters, not the young and perhaps not the more enlightened as you, the rest of them were looking at him and saying, if you don't play well, Tom, then you are in for one hell of... And he did. He backed it up, and that's the bottom line. If you're going to talk the talk...
Yeah, he was symbolic of his team yesterday. Here he is, smashing in the wood after that happened. So he wasn't backing down for anyone. He played a great game, and they were ruthless yesterday, Melbourne. I loved the pressure they applied, and it's their best, probably quarter performance. So Adelaide Crows win was massive, but that was a super win yesterday.
OK, we've just critiqued the Bulldogs. They now sit 5th Melbourne Footy Club. Can they actually do what the Bulldogs did last year?
Well, they're a genuine chance now, not only to make finals, but because of the evenness of this competition, to be a top 4 side, and that gives you, a couple of cracks at it, of course. He's saying I'm not trying to dodge this, I don't want to just make a headline for the sake of it, but it is about round 19 or 20. If you get your act together then, this year, more so than ever, I can remember your chance.
Simon Goodwin has become the 2017 version of Luke Beveridge, hasn't he? I mean, and he's done this form turnaround on the back of no Hogan and no Gawn. Now, Gawn will come back this week, and that will cause its own little issues by way of team composition. But this surge from Melbourne has come on the back of the injuries going down to the big-name players. Who would have thought at the start of the year, no chance Melbourne with those 2 players out?
Arguably the 2 most important. Last 6 weeks, I think they're second on a form ladder, only behind the Sydney Swans.
And also, you've been impressed by Hibberd.
I think he's been
what he's done for Melbourne.
I think he's given that backline steel. Oscar McDonald played his best game, and I think that's as a result of the confidence that you draw from a really physical player who is instructional as well. So, been a great recruit.
The composition of the 8, and we've taken it down to place 13 here. You can also add, I reckon, Carlton and also Gold Coast potentially, because they're only out.
So that's 15 of 18.
Yeah. It is, and because I think if you've got Collingwood there as a conversation, and they have to be there, they're going OK at 5 and 7, but Carlton's going nicely too. It's a very, very open season, clearly. Who gets in? Who misses?
Well,
do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
I like the Bulldogs and the Sydney Swans as the 2 best sides to make it out of those groups, and I think Essendon and then the West Coast Eagles, Richmond. So I'd say 2 of those 3 could come out for the Bulldogs and also the Sydney Swans.
Yeah, I think it's a great exercise to do, but it's almost nonsensical. Because things change so much. Yeah. So we'll move on. You hadn't Carlton weren't in that group. They're in a discussion now, maybe not for this year, but years going forward, because Brendan Bolton, as a coach, is getting the best out of his playing list. And I think when you judge coaches, that's how you judge them. Within this group that won on the weekend, there was Jed Lamb, Liam Jones, Boakhurst and Dale Thomas. 4 blokes that had lines put through them at some stage. Gathered them around at 3/4 time, eyeballed each other. They were being challenged and got away with another win. Not got away, earned another win.
Well, they're as tough to break down as any side going around at the moment. We saw the Giants couldn't score against them. The Gold Coast couldn't score. 2 of their most dynamic attacking scoring sides couldn't get through.
Is this because of the wall that they're setting up, Laudo?
Yeah,
as you refer to it.
Some will say Carlton parked the bus. That's how they play. They parked the bus in their back half.
So Richmond play them this week. Yeah. What do Richmond do that the Gold Coast did?
Well, I want Richmond to hold their forward line. Richmond have to back in Rance, Asprey, Basher Hooley, all these players, beat the Carlton forward line. It isn't a scary forward line, and you hold these players accountable. Let's see someone do that to Doherty and Kade Simpson.
So you're not doing this, Damo. You're not kicking back under pressure out of your defensive line, blasting away and landing the ball in the hands of Doherty and Simpson.
So coaches, is what you're saying, both of you, are playing into Brendan Bolton's hands at this stage of Carlton's development?
Well, certainly...
Rodney did?
Yeah. I mean, the whole forward line left and deserted.
You know who else did it? John Worsfold earlier in the year. And they won in this similar fashion too, so full credit to Brendan Bolton. And as everyone's saying, the top end players, we'll talk about Gibbs soon, but Cruiser, Gibbs, Murphy, Doherty, Simpson have starred this year.
Gibbs is so good we don't even have to talk about it because we're running out a bit of time, but he was magnificent. But the number 1 rule is you can't kick like Stephen May did there on this Sunday against the Tigers against the Blues.
And their opponents, they were poor on the weekend too when it came to the crunch late in that game against the Sydney Swans with missing shots at goal they should have kicked. And It's their fourth game. They've lost by less than double-digit points.
Fourth quarter stuff.
These are the reasons.
Yeah, fourth quarter stuff, Damo. All of this, these are going to hit the review. I mean, gee, you'd love that timing. I mean, every one of these blokes involved in these passages of play would love their time again. And we're talking about composure when the game matters most. The first quarter, they were sensational. They were picking the right options. They were hitting targets. They were making Sydney accountable. That is nearly the worst mistake you can make in footy. As a freewheeling halfback flanker who doesn't have accountability, your job then is to distribute the ball, and he didn't.
So disappointing, Damo, because this side, Richmond, has been good enough to have won all bar the Adelaide Crows game.
Yep.
They've done everything right to win these games, and they just panic. The pressure gets to them.
Is it an indictment, though, Lordy, on the coach? I know you rapped him, and I know you wrote about him, and I'm not trying to get into you unnecessarily here, but can you be the coach of the year if you're losing games as narrowly as he is?
Well, if they had have won yesterday, I don't think it would have been silly. But they did lose again, Damo. But you also got to put it on your players out in the ground that they're the ones not kicking the ball. They're the ones making the poor errors as well.
And they have responded previously. Josh Kennedy responded in the way that you'd hope, and Cochin has in the past, and Martin has, but in this occasion, 11 possessions in the last quarter when it mattered most. This goal, which absolutely put them back, 3 points behind, 8 minutes to go, and then contested footy, which is, his bread and butter. So, I mean, we all love these blokes.
Yeah.
We love them for these reasons.
Well, it's one of the great mysteries how he, Parker, Kennedy, Hanbury all were down together and just didn't play with the heart and passion they
I
needed
wasn't
to.
at the ground, but the demonstrative body language from Hanbury and those blokes at quarter time says we refuse to accept this, which is saying it is one thing and doing it's another.
Well, Josh Kennedy did it for the Swans. Josh Kennedy's still absent for West Coast, Gaz, but Darling, in that absence, finally did what West Coasters wanted him to do. The first quarter he put together against the Cats was the sort of stuff we should expect from him regularly now.
Good as I've seen Jack Darling play in that first quarter. Now, we've since learnt last week when the absence of Kennedy, we said he had to step up, that he had some issues, not issues, but the birth of his first child, which is fantastic. Wasn't able to get back. I cut the man some slack on.
Yeah, I do now.
I don't mind that at all. And then Jeddah. I mean, this ball use here, they play Melbourne, I think, this week, Lordo. That's the man you go to right now and put some work in, because he's demonstrated that he can do this with time and space.
Like Callum Mills stole a few weeks ago.
Oh, well, you can't allow him. And they went out of their way to give him the footy too. So be aware of that, because this ball use is quite elite.
And that's Geelong's Achilles heel. Players like Lewis Jeddah, I think, really hurt Geelong. It was a bad loss by them.
Yep. Riewoldt came back into the Saints team. Paddy McCartan went out with a knee injury, which is not serious, the club has said. What happens now with Membry and also Bruce in that forward line? Does McCartan come back in?
It's a real tricky one. McCartan's the future, and I think he'll be a better long-term player than Tim Membry. But I think with the Saints in the finals mix, I think that the side looks most settled with what they went with on the weekend.
So you're prepared to leave him out in that finals push?
I would, but obviously you've got a player who might be unhappy. Yeah. And you've got to think of the future as well with McCartan.
What would you do this week, and what would you do for the rest of the
I'd play McCartan this week.
And who would come out?
Membry. He played the week before, I thought was one of his better games. Took 9 marks, started to get a real taste and feel for it, so I'd play him at this stage. Hey, time for our lift hard-hitting moments. The scoreboard reads me 8, you 1, and I don't think Lordo's off the mark. Let's have a look at this one first up, and it's big Jeremy McGovern. Bango. I'm not feeling confident. It wasn't a bad hit, but I'm not sure that's going to get me my 9th win.
Well, let's see if I can get off the mark here, Gary, with Lockie Hansen playing his 150th game for North Melbourne. It's not a good thing when the captain does this to you.
I'm still in it.
He stood up, though. He stood up. He didn't go down.
I'm still in it, I think.
Come on, Zeebs.
Lordo's the only one that can get me here.
Now, I think we need to wait for the last shot for me to get over the line in this one. But, there's nothing worse when you get hit there. I know we haven't seen it yet, but
what's the hard hit?
Youngie, it's like he's eaten a heap of onions. The eyes are watering. You just do not want to get hit there. Oh, gee, it hurt the tough man.
I think you might be off the mark, Lordo. By default, I might add. Hey, very nice work, Damo, and also Lordo. It's great to be with you. Thank you for joining us on Access All Areas. Have a good week. We'll catch you next Monday. Goodbye.